As Giles has said, this week we look at the fourth of the gifts that God gives us out of his love. And it's the gift of adoption, the gift of knowing God as our Father. The theologian Jim Packer calls it the greatest of God's gifts, the crown of God's love, that he has made us his adopted children, putting us in a position of dignity, hope, and security. Wow. So the first question I want to ask is, who gets this gift? Who is it for? And this is another piece of really good news. Because this gift is for everyone. The gift of adoption is offered to all. I want to say it again. The gift of adoption as a child of God, a son or a daughter of God, is offered to everyone, to all people. But a gift really only becomes a gift not as it's offered, but as it's received. And so we have to receive this gift of adoption. It has been received by all of us here in this building today, and all of people throughout the world who have accepted that God is their Father, who can say that with truth for themselves. And it's when we receive Jesus that we accept that gift. That's when we begin our new life as sons and daughters of God. Each of us is born in the image of God, and each of us is loved by him. We can receive that gift, take it on personally for ourselves when we accept Jesus. If you can cast your mind back over the story that we've been hearing this past year of God calling, you may remember that when God called an individual, Abraham, it was more. It was also about calling a people to belong to him and to work with him in sharing his call and his love in the world. And in the same way, this gift of adoption, while it is something that we receive for ourselves individually, we have to receive it for ourselves. It's also something that we share with all people. We receive it for ourselves, but to share. It's a gift, a mission for all nations. So what's it about? What does it mean? We tend to think of adoption as being about babies and children, but adoption in Roman times, in the first century, often meant the adoption of an adult heir by someone who didn't have their own natural heir. And for that person to be adopted meant that they received the full legal rights of a natural son or daughter. It meant that this adopted person took on the social status of their adoptive parent. It gave them security and dignity, and of course the promise of an inheritance to come. That's what is offered to us. So how do we receive it? Well, I've already said that we receive it through Jesus Christ. Without his sacrifice on the cross, there would be no adoption. And it's when we accept and receive Jesus for ourselves that we receive our adoption. But I think perhaps the most important question comes from that. Why? Just why would God want to give up his natural heir to a death, to coming in human form, with all the dangers and risks that I talked about a month or so ago, and to go through that death on a cross so that we could be his sons. He had his own son. Why does he want to adopt us? Well, the simple answer is because of love. It gives him pleasure. It's his will. It's what he loves to do, to draw more and more of his children to be his family, his heirs. It's the love of a father. It isn't a love, a kindness that's limited to forgiveness that wipes the slate clean. We've heard about that already. It's not like a relationship that goes through a bad patch and then you start talking again. It's just much, much more than that. God gives us this gift, full rights as sons and daughters, a full share in his inheritance, just because he loves to. It's not sympathy, it's not compassion, it's love. It's a gift that puts a smile on the face of the giver. This was something I read as I prepared, and I love that phrase, that the gift that God gives us puts a smile on his face. If I give my children or my grandchildren a gift that I know they are going to love and enjoy, it gives me intense pleasure. It puts a smile on my face. And that's what the gift that God offers us does for him. When we receive it, he smiles. His heart is full, and he just longs to hold out his arms and see us, and to have us run into his arms. It's the Father heart of God that offers us this gift, this right to become his sons and his daughters. I have a memory going back to my early to mid-20s when I was at a Christian meeting, and as we worshipped and prayed, the experience that I had, the feeling, I know it's a feeling, but it really was an experience, was that I climbed on to God's lap, that I sat there on his lap, feeling his arms around me, his deep and intense love for me. That is a feeling, I know, feelings we think come and go, but I look back to that. Times when I'm struggling, I look back to that and I know I am loved. That is all I need to know. But what's inside this gift? What is it more than a feeling? Well, there's security. Security for our future. We know what's in store for us. As we heard in the readings from John, we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. We become like our adopted father. I know a family who have adopted 2 children, known them since before the children were adopted. Those children, now teenagers, have picked up the family ways, the family characteristics and mannerisms, and of course the family values. It happens to us too, as we know God as our Father, as we live in his family, we become more like him. It's imperfectly at the moment because we don't see Jesus as he is. But in that reading, we heard that we shall see him as he is, and we shall be like him. What a wonderful, joyful prospect. And this security gives us a confidence. Adoption is a binding arrangement. It can't be turned down, turned away, ended. It's something that we have as a right now. We don't have to keep earning it. It's ours. We have that confidence. We are part of God's family. We are his son. We are his daughter. We're accepted with all our faults, all our foibles, all our inconsistencies. and we're still loved. I wonder if that's something that someone, perhaps several people here, need to hear. That however far we wander from God, he never lets us go. You're his child. He's your father. He loves you. He wants you to call on him, to talk with him, to climb onto his lap, put your arms round his neck and hug him. He wants to hold you. That's his heart's desire. And that's the gift that we have. We can do that through this gift of adoption. Adoption makes everything else that's gone before bigger. That gift of forgiveness, of eternal life, and of relationship. It's more. Last week we heard that it was Jesus' pleasure to call us his friends. It's God's pleasure to call us his children. A great, lavish, extravagant gift. See what love the Father has lavished on us. It's part of God's plan for us. It makes sense of us being a family together. As a family, we are being crafted by God into something that is more beautiful than we could possibly imagine. So what do? We have the gift of adoption. We can be called sons and daughters of God. But how do we get the most from it? A gift is no use if you unwrap it, put it on the shelf and leave it there. We get the most from a gift when we value it, when we use it, when we let this gift do its work in us, both as individuals and as a family, a church family. It's the work of the Spirit to help us to use this gift most effectively. He's the one who helps us to recognise that God is our Father. He reminds us where we've come from. He urges us to maintain our position as a member of God's family. I said we don't have to work to earn it, to work for it. But as a member of a family, we want to be part of that family. We want to work for the good name of the family. We want to try not to do things that will bring the family into disrepute. We want to maintain its honour. This is what the Spirit does through us and in us. This is how we use this gift. In the next chapter that we begin next week of the big Bible story, we will hear that God sends and equips his people. We've referred to that already this morning. He equips his family to work in the family business, to carry out his mission. And that's the fulfilment of the purpose, the mission that is at the heart of what we're looking at this year. As adopted sons and daughters, we bear the family name of God's family. We grow into the family likeness. But the first question before that can happen is a deeply personal one. And it's something that I hope you will reflect on through the rest of the service. And I hope you will take away and reflect on in the coming days. And if you can't say, yes, I do, to these questions, then you need to do something about it. And if today is the day to do something about it, there will be people in the chapel during communion. After you have taken communion, please take the opportunity to go into the chapel and have people pray with you. Those questions that you need to consider are, do you know your real identity? Do you know your identity as a son of God or as a daughter of God, as a child of God? Do you recognise that? Do you recognise that God is your Father and that heaven is your home and your inheritance.